Robin here from Courage is the Cure. Welcome to episode 50. Episode 50, nice round number of Relentless. I'm thrilled to have my wonderful friend, David Thrussell here. Let me bring David onto the stage. Hi, David. How are you?
Hello, Robin. Hello, viewers. I hope everybody is well.
Now, David, you're not a stranger to Relentless. We spoke last time about fifth generational warfare. You can go along to Courage is the Cure on Rumble and watch that. But for anybody that doesn't know you, David, can you just tell everyone what you get up to?
Well, I'm afraid I won't be able to tell you everything. But look, as they say, my day job is as a musician and a music industry person, which is a interesting life. That's for sure. So yeah, look, I've been a musician for 30 years odd kind of thing, in a professional sense. So making records with my bands Snog and Black Lung and Soma and a few other things, this and that and whatever. I've also done a bunch of film scores for various films and written a bunch of things. I write for a magazine that you can find in your local newsagent sometimes called New Dawn magazine, which has been, honestly, I dip my hat to those guys. They've been at the forefront of, the investigation of truth for decades now. And believe it or not, in these times of overarching censorship, you can often find them down at your local newsagent. So I've written for them extensively, all sorts of things, been on Cafe Locked Out for the last couple of years, in opposition to this push for totalitarianism that we have clearly noticed in the last few years, and various other bibs and bobs of things. So yeah, there you go. That's what I get up to.
I just was having a look on the Cafe Locked Out webpage and looked at all the songs for culture. That's music by liberated artists, and I was pleasantly surprised to see two of your songs there, which is fantastic.
Yes, Michael asked me if they could put a couple of songs on there, obviously, which is quite fine, by us. Not wanting to go into too much detail, but I do have, decades of experience of being somewhat cancelled just for speaking your mind or not playing the game or not playing along or however you might want to put it,
being one of the naughty people, David.
Well, just speaking your mind, I don't like this sort of gangsterish pressure that's put on people, all sorts of people, but in my situation, certainly on musicians to play along, just to play the game, shut up, do what you're told, say what you're told to say, blah, blah, blah. I've never really been comfortable with that, so I have spoken my mind on numerous occasions, and that has, that's, I stand by that. I don't regret it in any way whatsoever. But, if you want to talk about cancelled, we've been cancelled so many, more times than most people have had hot dinners, so I couldn't, if you want me to give you examples, you'd better get comfortable because it could take quite a while. So on and so on. Anyway, so it goes.
Well, talking about, this totalitarian, well, I call it a totalitarian tiptoe, because, it's such
more people are noticing, Robin. I mean, all our efforts, all the people in the realm of, broadcasting and saying, whatever their observations around this, like yourself and many others, this is having an effect, and I mean, it is a David versus Goliath scenario. The forces of darkness, in my view, have a lot of resources. They have, endless amounts of money and all these sorts of other resources because they control the money system and they control the mainstream media and all these sorts of things, but in this David versus Goliath battle, which we are in, we're also having notable victories as well, So, and, obviously, as you would know, and many others would know, there are days where it seems, tiring and, dare I say, to borrow a term, relentless even, but without a sort of grassroots attempt to navigate towards the truth, which I think is always the most important thing. I always think that's the thing we always need to be aiming for, is the truth, no matter what it looks like, no matter if it's awkward or uncomfortable or, causes us some sort of problems or whatever. We should always be aiming for the truth. And, I also keep in mind that, there's never really been a time when life hasn't been a struggle. If you look at the natural world, if you look at the world of the animals and insects and birds and all these things, which I do think that we should pay a lot of attention to, you'll notice that every creature has to be engaged in its own survival. It engages in some kind of struggle, if you want to use that word, or whatever word you might want to use, but you have to be engaged in your own survival. You have to turn up. You got to front up to be in the game of life. And likewise, I know that we've come to this point where we think as humans we're an exception to the natural world, but I don't think we are at all. I think that's, a bit delusional, really. And, we've got to front up as well. It's just sometimes in different ways. We might not have to fight off a marauding tribe of ants from over the hill, but we do have to fight off attacks on our sovereignty and our souls and our, spiritual well-being, So, yeah, we have to front up to be involved.
Well, absolutely. And speaking of attacks, and you were mentioning endless resources, and ultimately, we need to be speaking the truth. We've come together today because I came upon a short clip from the historian Yuval Harari, who I affectionately refer to as a creature. Also,
okay, the demon himself.
And this I'm going to show it just in a sec. This clip was circulating on X probably about a month ago now. And I was rather intrigued by what he'd said, and I sent it along to you and thought, what's this about? And so anyway, this is actually a TED talk that Yuval gave in Jaffa, Israel, in 2014. So it's actually not recent. Find it funny that it popped up on X, but that's how social media exists. Videos from 20 years ago can resurface. So this is a clip from a TED talk that he gave in 2014 in Israel, and the title of it is "Bananas in Heaven." And essentially, the whole talk is 15 minutes. I'll play that at the end, but essentially what he's talking about is that we live in an objective reality, and that it's human imagination that enables us to control the world. Now, that statement would seem, I don't know, maybe quite harmless. Maybe there's some truth to it. But the little clip that I'm going to show here brings up some other questions, which is the very reason why we're here to talk about it. So I'll just add it to the stage, and let's listen to Mr. Yuval Harari, shall we?
Take it away, demon.
Systems are based on this idea, this belief in human rights. But human rights are just like heaven and like God. It's just a fictional story that we've invented and spread around. It may be a very nice story. It may be a very attractive story. We want to believe it. But it's just a story. It's not a reality. It is not a biological reality. Just as jellyfish and woodpeckers and ostriches have no rights, Homo sapiens have no rights also. Take a human, cut him open, look inside, you find their blood, and you find the heart and lungs and kidneys, but you don't find there any rights. The only place you find rights is in the fictional stories that humans have invented and spread around. And the same thing is also true in the political field. States and nations are also, like human rights and like God and like heaven, they too are just stories. A mountain is a reality. You can see it, you can touch it, you can even smell it. But Israel or the United States, they are just stories, very powerful stories, stories we might want to believe very much, but still they are just stories. You can't really see the United States. You cannot touch it. You cannot smell it.
So there we go, David. That's
Wow. That guy is incredible, and I mean it in the essential meaning of the word incredible, not as in good, but incredible, hard to believe. There's so much there, isn't there? There's so much there. He, as I was saying, before off air, in a sense, Harari is a bit of a gift. He actually is. I mean, he's a monster that comes bearing useful things, I think. So he while he's some kind of demon, and to my eyes he actually looks like a demon, he in their arrogance, these characters think that the rest of humanity, that we're so stupid and so inconsequential that they can tell us precisely what they're thinking, and it won't make any difference if they tell us exactly what they're thinking, and that, I would argue, is a bit of a gift, because we have characters like Harari who tell us precisely what they think, and when they do, they give the game away a little bit. They really do. He thinks he's very clever, and he's what I would call, I would argue someone like Harari is not really intelligent in the broader sense of the meaning of the word intelligent. He's just an information processor. He can process information and repackage information. But I do think that there's an essential disease in people like that. There's a sort of a spiritual infection in people like that. And I think, in my view, that spiritual infection is, you could use the word materialism. I'm sure there's many other words that are applicable, but he is so suffocating in materialism. He thinks that is something to be proud of, that it's something that he's boasting of his materialism, and it's made him so arrogant that he doesn't realize, in my view, that actually it makes him incredibly ugly. He literally looks like some horrid demonic insect prancing around, like some weird praying mantis meets Nosferatu creature. He does. It's extraordinary. But he also reveals exactly what they think. What's wrong with these supposed human beings is he's, as he says there, and he makes it very plain, he doesn't realize, and this is my point of view, and unlike Harari, I can accept that other, different people have different points of view, but in my point of view, his stupidity is that he's completely anchored to the material world and materialism. He thinks that it's clever that you can only observe things that exist materially in front of you. He thinks that's clever, but it's incredible, the blindness there, because you go, okay, so there's a material world. Yes, I can accept that has material things in it. And those things, as he mentions, like a mountain or a nail or a hammer or a truck or whatever, there are material items in that material world. But there's a huge part of the picture, I would argue, that he's completely missing in his arrogance, and that is that these material things, and it seems to me self-evident, but that's just my view, that these material things are a manifestation. They are the material manifestations of all sorts of other powers. There are organizing powers, spiritual forces, powers beyond our understanding, all sorts of mysterious things that, yes, if you look at the most simple and one-dimensional level, many of them manifest as material objects in front of you that you can touch, as he says, like a mountain. But I would argue very, very strongly that these things are just the most obvious manifestations of all sorts of other forces. And I think I would argue that that is the thing that he is blind to.
Yeah, I often wonder about people like Yuval Harari, because they're on top of all of the things you just mentioned there. I often wonder, because his language and people like him is really divisive, just by the way he talks about humans and saying they. You know, you were talking
I noticed
previously, about him having a spiritual infection, and referring to the the base level, a material world. Couldn't agree more. But I often wonder, is that spiritual infection, does that reveal something about people like him? Because sometimes I really feel like Yuval and others really don't see themselves as a human being, like we are their fellow human being, just through the language and then the things they're talking about, exactly like Yuval has here. So I'm constantly wondering to myself, why are they referring to their fellow humans as if we're a different species? It kind of makes my skin crawl, actually.
Well, the obvious remark to make upon that, and I think your point is a very interesting one, is perhaps they're not. Perhaps they're not human beings, and you can take that in all sorts of different directions, and you're free to do so as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you could take that in a spiritual direction, as in, what's your definition of a human being? Is it just a flesh and blood machine that is capable of certain acts and whatnot? Is that your definition of a human being? Or do you have a more multi-layered definition of a human being? And I think it's really interesting. As I said earlier, they really give themselves away, these characters. And he does it all the time. I've seen him do it in plenty of other occasions. They do refer, and Klaus Schwab does the same thing. I've seen him do the same thing as well. They refer to human beings as this sort of other species, other sort of creature that they're not directly connected to. And I think that that's a dead giveaway. I mean, on the most simple level, it's a bit of a dead giveaway of some sort of mental illness of some kind if you can't, have enough empathy to realize that you are, a member of the human race. But perhaps they're not. Perhaps by their own definition, they're not. Perhaps in a physical sense, they're not. I'm not sure, but I think it's possible. And I think it's absolutely worth raising the discussion point that they may not be human beings, however you want to take that, and whatever definition of human being you want to use. But they are, as you're pointing out, they are literally telling you that they're not human beings. And their behavior also tells you this. And I think it's interesting, and it's really noteworthy, and we need to pay a lot of attention to people like Harari, because a guy like Harari, as much as he's sort of a caricature, a satire of this sort of horrid demonic insect, and it's easy to sort of laugh at him and dismiss him, these are also the, dare I say it, people, and I'm using that in the broadest meaning possible. These are the creatures, to borrow your term, who are the sort of engine room of this ideology. And I would suggest this incredible push for totalitarianism that we're seeing creatures like that are in the engine room. They are the sort of fuel to some degree that is driving this thing. And there they are telling you, that they don't really consider themselves to be human beings, and that they consider human beings to be much like human beings consider cattle. But they're also telling you really interesting, absurd and strange things. He's telling you that, for example, the idea that humans have rights is an artificial creation. Now, if you're a materialist and you're an atheist, it's going to be very attractive. It's going to be very easy for you to agree with that point of view. And in my view, that is a complete trap. And it's a complete trap on a number of levels. Firstly, it denies that life is a mysterious and special and magical thing. It's quite possible that in our vast universe, which we don't know or understand, that life may be a very, very rare and unusual and special thing. And it should be respected as that, I think, so that, every life, all life, in my view, is incredibly unique and special and should be respected. So I diverge from these characters immediately on that point. But also, in my second point about that is, if you know anything about human history, even the last 120 years of human history, you know that this kind of ideology leads to very dangerous places. If you have this purely materialistic and atheistic ideology that people are just lumps of flesh, they're just rocks with eyes, you can do whatever you like with them. So you can wipe out 10, 15 million people. You can starve them to death, in the Holodomor in the Ukraine, for example, in 1932, 1933, around this area. You can starve them to death with no blot on your conscience, no inhibitions of any kind, because they're simply just rocks in that view. In the materialistic view, there's nothing unique and there's nothing special. There's nothing, divine or however you want to characterize it. There's nothing about those human beings, those merely mechanical flesh machines, that is in any way unique or special or divine, or however you want to describe it. So you can do whatever you like with them. You can wipe them out. You can destroy 10 or 15 million of them, and it doesn't matter.
I think, absolutely. And I don't think it's any mistake, particularly over, I guess since I was a young child, that, there's been a concerted effort to remove God from people's life, even spirituality from people's lives. You just talking there about atheists would love this TED Talk, Bananas in Heaven. So I don't think it's any mistake they're trying to remove God from people's life, because then, like you were saying, life being unique, people that are, I'm not pooing on atheists, people that are atheists, or
go on, you can do it. Go on, why not? I've got a real problem with them. Okay, I'm just going to admit it. I really struggle with them.
I've been there when I was younger. When you're trying to figure things out and all those sorts of things. But I don't identify. With those
oh, you don't identify as an atheist? No.
No.
Okay.
Oh no.
All right.
But by them doing that, and I'm going to take this term now. They're in the engine room. These creatures are in the engine room. I don't think it's any mistake that they're trying to remove God or spirituality from people's life, because, as you said, they don't view us the same as them. There's that divisive language again, us and them. And then furthermore, to your point, they can put us in positions and dehumanize us to the fact where they will exterminate us in certain positions and not think twice about it. And I guess, that's really what this TED Talk in particular is quite disturbing, because he really does start off talking about the difference between animals and humans, and you think, oh yeah, you know, and then it just like, if you look at World Health Organization documents or any of these 3-letter agencies and hundreds of pages, when you look at the meat of these pages, that's where you find the nefarious stuff, where they want to do awful, terrible things to humans. And this TED Talk is exactly the same. He starts off kind of making a few reasonable points to, I would say, or suggest to a few people, but then when he carries on, and that clip there in particular really exposes himself and every other creature in that engine room, to the nefarious nature of the thoughts they're trying to implant in people's brains. Because why else do you go along to a TED Talk, you know, than to
Sure.
listen
And
to
see,
someone?
the whole thing is, if you follow through what he says in that key moment that you've pulled out there, you're on the road to Joseph Stalin, you're on the road to Pol Pot, you're on the road to this view that people are just widgets. They're just little devices, machines that you can shuffle around. You can do whatever you like with. You can read order them. You can, you know, do whatever is against human nature and against the laws of nature itself. It doesn't matter. All bets are off once you're on that road of complete materialism, you know. And if people don't realize, and it's easy not to realize, but characters, you know, creatures like Harari, while he might be laughable in many ways, and I completely understand if you scoff at him, they're also incredibly promoted. Like, you know, Harari's books, for example, are huge bestsellers, quote unquote. I have my grave doubts about how many people actually buy them, but they're everywhere, you know. And even, and as I'm prone to do, because I'm a bit bookish and I should know better, I walk into bookstores every now and then, and that's a pretty dangerous thing to do these days. If you go, you know, look in the children's book section of just some random bookstore, which I do, you'll notice that there are sort of graphic novels, for example, of Harari's Sapiens book that's been turned into a oh yeah. In the children's section, there's a 2-volume graphic novel of Sapiens by you know, Noah Yuval Harari. They're big, they're glossy, they're expensive. They have endorsements from Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton on the back cover.
Oh, a couple of other creatures. There we go.
Yeah, that's right. They're all in it together. Don't worry. So, you know, no, but literally in the children's section of, you know, pretty standard bookstore these days, you know, go down the back, have a look in that section. You'll probably, I certainly have on numerous occasions, found this 2-volume set of Sapiens, which is Harari's, you know, soulless machine retelling of the supposed history of humanity. And it goes through with all these, you know, commonly accepted, although I think some of them are really quite unbelievable, canards about the history of the planet and the history of humanity. And I honestly don't believe much of that stuff myself, but it's all in there. And then it near the end, it goes towards the future, and it creates this horrid, soulless, technocratic future in there that he predicts will be the future of humanity. These things are the ugliest kind of materialistic propaganda that you could possibly imagine, and they're there sitting in bookstores waiting for unaware, unskeptical parents to potentially buy for their children. Although I can't imagine what sort of freak would do that. But you know, they're there, they're all over the place, and they've got massive amounts of money behind them. You can tell there's a huge push behind these things, and they're big and they're glossy, and, you know, like I said, Hillary Clinton's on the back saying he's like the best thing since sliced bread. You know, there's a huge push of this stuff, and, you know, if you're not paying a lot of attention, and I'm certainly someone who does not pay a lot of attention in certain areas, you wouldn't notice that this stuff is being pushed on young people, on children, as an entirely acceptable, and actually it's smart. You're smart. If you understand this stuff and you hold these opinions, you're one of the smart people.
This is one of the disturbing things, because when I managed to find the full TED talk, this one in particular by Yuval, Bananas in Heaven, there's a
Sounds
lot.
like the Wiggles or something, doesn't it?
Yeah,
He's
there's
creepy, that guy.
a lot of comments there, and I thought, oh, because the comment section and things like this can be quite entertaining for boring and hopeless people like me. And so I went and had a look at the comments. I have to say, it must have been about 80% of people were saying, thank you, Yuval, for doing that talk. It's really given me something to think about. And it was all positive. And, we can have the argument that they're probably bots and they're probably not real and blah, blah, blah. But I have no doubt that there are people that sit out and consume Yuval's works like Sapiens. Now they're children's books. It's just been brought to my attention. I have to go and have a look for those, because I frequent bookstores as well.
Careful what you see. You can't unsee them.
But people, it's almost cult-like with Yuval Harari. He really has.
And see, the thing is, with a character like that, as I said, you can easily dismiss him as some horrid insect demon, and you wouldn't be wrong. But even that, considering that, all that sort of information and that viewpoint, it sort of, ripples out through the culture,
Mm-hmm.
So, and we see this everywhere. I mean, if you were, and I don't recommend that you do, but if you were to turn on the ABC, not something that I've done in many, 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 many years, but I'm sure that if you were foolish enough to do that, you would see the ripples of this sort of Harari, this horrid sort of materialistic religion. I'm calling it a religion, actually, because it is promoted with a religious fervor. And you'll meet, and I certainly have met, I unfortunately talk to people like this on occasion, and which is a struggle. They hold these views with particularly zealous kind of fever, this sort of materialistic view. And, as I said a bit earlier on, I view it as an infection. It's a spiritual infection. It's a disease of the soul. Yes, Noah, I do believe that there is a thing. You can call it a soul. You can call it all sorts of names. I don't mind what you call it. But there is more than just a physical reality about people and creation and life. You can describe it however you like. I don't mind, but when you deny that, you're into all sorts of, dangerous territory. And this has been promoted, it is the religion of the 21st century is materialism, and this has become an absolute disease, a spiritual disease in our society. And none of us are immune to it. I'm not standing here on the top of the mountain declaring that I'm some sort of saint. I acknowledge that none of us are immune from this spiritual disease of materialism. We are all touched by it one way or another, so I'm not declaring anyone, myself or anybody, is immune to this. I'm simply identifying it as what I see it, and that is a spiritual disease. It's an infection of materialism. It's actually, really, it's not a bad analogy, as a spiritual disease. It's like, for example, people say that something like cancer can be fed by sugar. Apparently cancers, they love a sort of sugary, high sugar kind of diet and things like this. And likewise, I would argue that the spiritual disease of materialism is like cancer in a way, as an analogy, and it thrives on these sort of empty calories, this sort of sugar this sort of materialism. You know, the rush of retail therapy, and you know, the rush of clicking that online button for, you know, online shopping, knowing you're going to get this thing, that whatever you want. You know, all these sugary rushes that come from this consumption lifestyle that I personally think we've been deliberately herded into. I think it's a deliberate thing. You were talking just a few minutes ago about the removal of spirituality from human life. I think that that's absolutely deliberate. I've even seen it myself over the decades, the sort of escalation in this attempt to herd people, and I use that word very deliberately, herd people away from any kind of spiritual understanding or spiritual dimension of any sort. And in some ways it's to get people hooked, and this has been very deliberate. It's been very obvious over decades to get people hooked on consumer culture, this obsession over material goods, white goods, and cars,
they have
and
to
clothes and crap and whatever.
They have to replace our soul, I guess. It's
Robin, you're absolutely right. There is a yearning at the heart of human beings, because we know that what we're experiencing is not the whole story. There's a bit of a sort of a hole in us, and we are inclined to fill it with something. So if we can't fill it with a broader understanding or a connection to nature or a spiritual overview of some kind, if that's not available to us, or if we're actively discouraged from doing that, then we are inclined to fill it with other stuff, like material goods or success or status or money or whatever it may be, but we're inclined to fill that hole with other things.
That's
In
what's
fact,
so great.
I wrote a song about that years ago. You can dredge it up if you want to find it, called by my band Snog, called "Fill My Hole." And as was my wont, it was slightly sarcastic, but also completely genuine at the same time, which is a odd thing that I do.
Well, it's I will try and dig that out too, David.
You'll see me, a few decades back, pontificating about that very thing in a slightly sarcastic manner, but also very sincere underneath that. This whole situation. The song's called "Fill My Hole," and it's about, we have this desperate need, and I think it's a genuine and it's a fine need in a way, really, to put things in, to acknowledge that there are forces greater than us, there are forces larger and more important than us and more powerful than us, and you can do that because human nature is frail and it is easily corruptible. We've done it in the past through religious institutions, all of which in my personal view are somewhat corrupt, but then it's been deliberately replaced with consumerism, which is pure corruption. I mean, it's nothing but corruption.
This TED talk by Yuval and all the other reprobates who do similar things as him, like you just pointed out, with our need to look at ourselves, that's a normal, I would say, in my opinion, a normal natural progression to discovering yourself, becoming a greater person, on your spiritual journey in life. It becomes disturbing when we have people like Yuval standing up there presenting information like that, trying to socially engineer people's thoughts into removing God, removing spirituality from their lives. And then, as we've just talked about, we have to replace that natural yearning that we have for self-discovery and spiritual growth. They have to replace that with the materialism that you've just described, and it infects our lives, doesn't make us better people. How often do we hear stories of people hugely successful monetarily but extremely unhappy people, So,
that's
you know,
important.
the really gross thing is that these creatures are doing this, my conspiracy allegedly, on purpose to make this infection, this cancer, you know, wreak havoc in our body and then further in our lives. And then that, you know, not only our lives, family lives, your children's lives, you get a whole new generation growing up with this thoughts that have been implanted in their brains. Can't, you know, it's wrong think to want to have a self-discovery journey with God or with spirituality. And you know, we started off in the beginning talking about it leads into very dangerous territory. You know, the totalitarian tiptoe. They need to remove the soul. They need to tell us that human rights is a fictional story, that we made it up because animals don't gather around together and use their imagination to cooperate and develop rights for each other. And you know, they need
We don't
to.
actually know that. We have no idea about that, to be honest.
Yeah. Oh no, that's Yuval Harari's theory, not mine.
Oh, I know, but I mean, if you know, if you live with animals, you know, we have dogs and chickens and horses and whatnot. Actually, these creatures look a little deeper. You know, they have all sorts of social systems going on. They have all sorts of organizations and hierarchies and things going on. You know, it's not.
Absolutely.
Yet again, these, you know, these materialists are not looking deep enough at all. They're only giving you the most superficial kind of explanation or picture of things whatsoever. You look at the natural world, and it's incredibly deeply organized, and it absolutely has its own set of, you know, primary functions and rules and constructions and all these things. The natural world is astounding, which I would suggest is yet another argument against the atheists and the materialists, because the harder you look at the natural world, the deeper and the deeper and the deeper it goes. So this idea that that's all there is, and it's not a manifestation of other forces that aren't readily apparent to us, I think is a very superficial kind of view of things. And you know, I mean, these really, you know, I know some people will be awkward about this, they'll be uncomfortable about this, but I do think that creatures like Harari, and of course there are many others, you know, they are a manifestation. They are really a bit of a lighthouse. They're a bit of a beacon that actually there are fundamental forces in the universe. There are fundamental forces which some would describe as good and evil. You know, the Gnostics would describe these dark forces as the demiurge. Christians would describe them as Satan or the devil. Other beliefs have other ways of describing them and use other words and other language. But there is, I think, at the core of this, an understanding that there are dark and malevolent forces in the universe. And I think if you've been paying attention the last 4 years, that should be fairly obvious to you. And there are also, however, on the other hand, organized forces of goodness and light as well. And that should also be obvious. So I think, you know, Harari, for all his malevolence and all his sort of Machiavellian Nosferatu sort of hunchbacked ugliness, I do stand by my observation that he's a bit of a gift, because he does, you know, if the information is right there. If you care to open your eyes, what he's telling you is their game plan. It is their view. They couldn't really make it much plainer. They could probably make it a little bit plainer, but it's fairly plain, you know, and they do hold, these creatures do hold, and I've argued before that if you really want to understand, for example, but it's not the only example, but if you really want to try and understand the last, say, 4 years and what has happened very obviously in that period of time, don't, you know, a very simple way of looking at it is look at the way that a rancher, and I'm not wanting to insult anyone individually, but look at the way a rancher looks at their cattle. You know, they look at their cattle as things, items, part of their inventory, things to be organized and herded from one paddock to another paddock, to be frightened so they'll behave themselves and do as they're told, to be tagged and counted and inventorized at certain points, and to be culled at other points. When the herd reaches a dangerous size, or it's not fit for breeding anymore, they will have a cull. They will tag their cattle to identify and control them. They will use fear to make them obedient. If you look at it as the way that cattle are treated, the way that humanity has been treated the last 3 or 4 years becomes pretty straightforward, I would argue.
Well, exactly. And Yuval's main points there that I took away, just that little section, and let's remember Bananas in Heaven is 15 minutes long. You get to enjoy him for 15 minutes, everyone, at the end of the show.
Can't wait.
Just the takeaways from that, a couple of dot points, human rights. That was the big one that got everyone on social media, is that human rights is a fictional story. It's invented. So, that would have to imply that we're no different to the insects that he refers to as not being able to organize themselves or have any kind of imagination, all these sorts of things, and that we're nothing better than an animal who is able to has a certain level of consciousness, certainly, and here, that leads into our soul discovery, all those sorts of things again. And so, that real effort to make us disassociate ourselves from our spiritual being, those points make it quite clear what their objective is. It's certainly not to provide a living condition, whether it's in one particular country or globally, that respects humans in any kind of meaningful way. And you're right, he has absolutely spelt it out in just that little clip, let alone the rest of the TED Talk.
Yeah.
So,
and what one thing I find really interesting is they've been at it for decades. This materialism, this infection that I'm talking about, this spiritual disease that I'm talking about, has been foisted upon us. It has not happened naturally. I understand things have a sort of a snowball effect, and if you push a snowball and let it gather momentum, it will grow. I understand, but these things have been absolutely pushed. I've seen it with my own eyes. For decades they've been pushing materialism relentlessly upon people, because I don't think it's necessarily a naturally occurring state. It's anti-human, I would argue. It's anti-life. So they've been pushing this very, very kind of hard. But I also think there's an interesting bind there as well, because Harari downplays the concept of human rights. And I think that's really interesting. Look, because, I have a dark sense of humor, I find that kind of pretty darkly humorous in a way, because I feel like that one of the demographics that would worship at the altar of Harari would be that sort of progressive social justice warrior kind of demographic, who would worship what he says as far as the sort of atheistic and mechanical point of view that he argues for. But I feel like they would sort of hit a brick wall when he starts going on about human rights being a fiction and they don't exist in the real world, which is on one very superficial level, it's quite a compelling argument, because you can't grab it, you can't buy the concept or the truth that life is sacred. Sure, you can't go down to Bunnings and buy a packet of Sacred Life. Okay, sure, I get it. All right, yeah, okay, sure, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Okay, that doesn't mean that it is not a fundamental of the universe that life is in fact sacred. Just because you can't go to Aldi and buy a 6-pack of Sacred Life doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Okay, but I do think it's pretty entertaining that sort of demographic that is going to worship what Harari says on one level are also going to really hit a brick wall and struggle because they are devoted to their concept of human rights, which I would disagree with them about some fundamentals, but they're still quite devoted to that idea. And I do find a perverse humor in watching their brains kind of skits out and short circuit, when they hit concepts that don't actually align with what they thought their belief system was. That'd be pretty entertaining.
One of the walls I would assert they've already hit is that, on one side we've got these libtards who don't believe that life begins at conception, and partial live birth abortion is perfectly acceptable in any reasonable, rational person's mind. That's murder, partial live abortion. If you don't know what that is, go and look it up. But on the other side, the same group of people will then stand in the street shouting at everybody and demanding that you follow along with their mental illness related to trans rights, human rights. So, this crowd...
See, none of these things, it's a dead giveaway. None of these things are internally consistent. Okay, none of these positions that you're talking about are even let alone on a larger scale consistent, with nature and whatever, but they're not even internally consistent, and you saw this. I mean, absolutely, you see it exactly in the areas that you're talking about, but you also saw it, and it was darkly humorous, I thought, this slogan, and we saw this over the last couple of years, my body, my choice, except if the government tells you no.
Yep.
So which one, and to see the mental gymnastics of, essentially people who don't actually, I would argue, don't really have a fundamental belief system. They don't really have a moral compass. Yep. All they have is what the media and the government and the education system, sorry, I've repeated myself, put into them. They're honestly, they're sort of empty slates. They're what the great writer Philip K. Dick described as androids. They're humans that, supposed humans that appear human. They can hold a conversation, they walk and they talk and they do the things that humans do, but there's nothing inside them. There's no, as Philip K. Dick argued, there's no gnosis, there's no divine light inside them, there's no spark inside them, however you want to describe it. They're androids. So I think, unfortunately, there's a large swathe of the population who are, very unfortunately, essentially androids. And unfortunately, they can be pretty loud at times. And I agree with what you were saying earlier. I mean, this is the end point of all these incredibly materialistic arguments. If you follow them, if you believe them, if you don't believe there's something sacred about creation, if there's something sacred about life, or unique about life, or however you want to cast it, if you don't believe that, if you believe it's just bricks and mortar, that's all there is, and that's completely the viewpoint that is absolutely forced onto people through the media and through the education system, for example, that there is no other viewpoint in those areas at all. You're laughed out of the room if you have any other viewpoint. But the logical endpoint of those arguments is murder. It's control, it's totalitarianism, and it's murder.
Do you think, I agree, by the way, do you think the creatures, as we've been referring to all of those people during this discussion, do you think they On a scale of 1 to 10, how frightened do you think they are of that spiritual light within us that, not only acknowledge it, but, you know, further our life with the things that we do to continue on that journey with our spiritual life? On a scale of 1 to 10, how afraid do you think they are of that? Because they're doing an awful lot of little things here and there, and then bigger things.
Oh, they're very busy.
Yeah,
They're
are very busy. So do you
I'm not sure how much they're frightened of it. Possibly some of them I think are quite frightened. Some of them look quite frantic. But what I can tell you with some certainty is that they hate it. They absolutely hate it. Okay, I'm not sure. Some of them I think are frightened of it. Some of them I'm not quite sure. I can't quite read it. But what I can tell you with a lot of certainty is that they absolutely hate it, and they will do everything within their power, which is considerable at the moment, to destroy it. And I would argue, just going, fairly big picture for a moment, this struggle has been going on for a long time. I mean, you can easily track it for thousands of years, really. I mean, has it been going on for millions, billions of years? I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if it has. This struggle between the light and the dark. The dark wants this infection. It wants as many people infected with the spiritual disease of materialism. That's my words. I'm sure there are other ways of describing it. That emptiness, the hollowness of the spiritual disease of materialism and atheism. They want to promote that as much as they possibly can, because they hate the opposite of that. They hate the light. They hate the knowledge, the gnosis that there is much more to the universe. There is so much more going on. There are all these forces that we, in my view, are not elementally capable really of understanding, and I think that we should attempt to be at ease with the fact that there are great mysteries in the universe that we are not capable of understanding, and that's for me, that's the opposite of the atheistic and the materialist argument, and the arrogance of their arguments stun me. I still get stunned by them. This whole argument that we know everything and we understand everything, and that the religion of science trusts the science, the new religion that now dominates our society, tells you that we understand essentially everything, or that we soon will understand absolutely everything. There are no mysteries, there are no forces in the universe beyond our comprehension, and therefore none beyond our control, which I think is an important point. So, you have this force of darkness that is telling you that we know everything. It's incredibly, breathtakingly arrogant. We know everything, and therefore, of course, the next step is, once you know everything, then you can control everything, you can reorder everything, you can change everything in your utopian design, you can play God. And as we know, so many elemental scriptures and doctrines tell you that when you attempt to play God is when you are in incredibly dangerous territory. And so you'll notice that these characters, like Harari, are fixated. They have an absolute fixation on playing God, on changing the sort of elemental building blocks of the universe. And if you have even a passing knowledge of these things, you will understand that is incredibly dangerous. It can't ultimately succeed either. And and you see this with these utopians. They always think that they can control human nature and divert it into their utopian society. When it doesn't work, because it never works, you can't build a faultless utopia. It's never going to happen. But when they control people and funnel them towards the utopia, they always notice that there's a group of people over here who are in the way. If those people were gone, then we'd have utopia. So you get rid of them. you stick them in a gulag, or you liquidate them, or you famine them to death, or whatever you do, you get them off the board, and then you'll have your utopia. Oh, hang on, there's another group of people in the way that are stopping us reaching utopia. We'll just wipe them out as well. We'll remove them from the board, and on it goes. In this totalitarian system that ultimately, because it has no sanctity of life, it will wipe out people to achieve its utopia. It will never achieve utopia, so it will keep on wiping people out.
Well, I just so happen to have a video here, which I wasn't sure if I was going to play, but I think it fits in rather nicely here as we head towards the end of our creature discussion. Just talking about, the groups that don't suit the game plan, if you like, for these creatures and having to wipe them out. I'm wondering what your thoughts are. Are we moving into a new space considering transhumanism now and the development with certain products? I'm just going to play an ad. It's ad time, everyone. Let's have an ad break. So let me just add this to the stage.
PRIME study, the first clinical trial of a groundbreaking experimental device that could help transform the lives of people with paralysis. Imagine the joy of connecting with your loved ones, browsing the web, or even playing games using only your thoughts. This is made possible by placing a small, cosmetically invisible implant in a part of your brain that plans movements. The device is designed to interpret your neural activity so you can operate a computer or a smartphone by simply thinking about moving. No wires or physical movement are required. By participating in the PRIME study, you'd be helping to redefine the boundaries of human capability. If you've been living with quadriplegia from a spinal cord injury or with ALS, you may qualify for the PRIME study. We'd love to share more with you and get you on board. Visit our website today to learn more and to submit your application. We'll be supporting you with a dedicated team at every step on this revolutionary journey.
I'm sure you will.
That sounds lovely, doesn't it? How helpful of them. That's so nice, isn't it? Do you think, Robin, do you think there's any possibility that this technology, which seems incredible, of course, where you can control a computer with your thoughts, Robin, do you think there's any possibility that it could potentially malfunction and work the other way, and the computer can control your thoughts? Or am I just a crazy conspiracy theorist?
His description there of the PRIME study, to change human capabilities sounds very promising and very positive. To be part of, first of all, the study, the PRIME study, but to then introduce into people's life. And of course, it's wonderful for all of the quadriplegics and the disabled people. Let's not, dismiss great technology. But no, I don't think it could be misused. It is.
Can I just come straight out of my closet here? Think about what they were just saying there. They want to change the nature of human capability. That's kind of demonic. Does that not sound like some sort of demon talking? We want to change the nature of human capability. Are we so... I feel like we are on some levels, but all's not lost, not by any means. But on some levels, we're so lost that they can put that right in front of us, sell it with a bit of mushy stuff. Oh, we're going to help some disabled people. That sounds lovely. It's always packaged as it's going to help some unfortunate person.
Red bow, yeah.
Absolutely, that's the red bow on the box of chocolates, But the box of chocolates is fundamentally evil. I mean, just listen to that statement. You want to change the nature of human capability. Whoa, what? Yeah, wow. That sounds like, that would have been in some horror movie about, the devil 30 years ago or something, and now it's a selling slogan.
And of course, all of the capabilities for humans that they would be able to change or improve on could only ever be positive ones as well, David. Don't forget, Don't even bother
Yes.
considering negative ones. It's just the
Okay.
positive. That's all.
It's very, you see, if we paid more attention, I would argue, if we paid more attention to the sort of classics of our literature and culture, then we would have all sorts of warning signals going on here. You know, to me, that sounds like Dr. Faustus, Faust, striking this bargain with the devil so that he doesn't have to, conform with the fundamental laws of life and death, is that you change human capability. Dr. Faustus wanted to change human capability, and he did that by signing a pact with the devil. If we had a better understanding of the sort of fundamentals of our culture, that would absolutely be ringing absolute alarm bells for us, I would argue.
Well, that's what's frightening to me, is because not only with this bananas in heaven from Yuval trying to program people's minds, because that's what he's up to there, trying to engineer everybody with their thoughts, we then move into this whole space of transhumanism, and that alone is another huge conversation. But when you're introducing technology into the body where they can affect your mind and your thoughts through technology, it's much easier to snuff out that spiritual part of us, and anything that we might want to investigate or be as part of our life. It's very much easier to wipe that out, to snuff that out when you introduce technology into the human body, and it's frightening.
Well, that's obviously the plan, Robin. I would suggest that that's very much their obvious plan. I mean, it's not all grim. This struggle has been going on since forever. Probably, they're obviously the forces of darkness, I would argue, are now hoping that they have special, incredible, black magical technologies to be able to, win this eternal war. But also, they're a little on the back foot as well. Like they're a little too obvious. I felt in a slightly different realm, but in a similar way. If you own nothing and you will be happy, it's the giveaway of desperation. It's a bit desperate when you're absolutely giving away your secret strategy, in such plain sight. So there's an element of desperation about a lot of their moves. So the battle is still on, absolutely.
Well, hopefully that doesn't work in their favor, because generally, whenever you see a desperate person for whatever it might be that they are desperate, desperation is there's nothing more of a turn off than desperation, and people can identify that desperation. So I'm hoping that the more we see these creatures expose themselves like this and expose their desperation and how high that is at the moment, I'm hoping that aids human beings, loving, kind, compassionate human beings, to continue to realize what these creatures are up to, because it stinks of desperation, that's for sure.
Well, their desperation, I think you're right. I think a lot of people are noticing. That's why, as we were saying the other night, that's why they're now focused on rebuilding trust. They've let the genie out of the bottle. They've let the cat out of the bag, and they've been a little bit too obvious about it. And they need to desperately rebuild trust, i.e., suck people in again, to make us more complacent. I think that's one of the reasons they've, in some levels, not all levels, I understand, but in some levels, they've backed off a little. I mean, think back 2 years ago, they were going very, very hard, and they've backed off a little bit on some levels, not all levels, because, they realize they need to rebuild trust, i.e., get people complacent again, so they can use the element of surprise on us again. But it's going to be
hopefully.
hard for them, to get the element of surprise. They're possibly going to have to go to a war or economic collapse or something like that to
Yeah.
try and get what they want.
Yes, I have thoughts about that too. I'll say it in 2 sentences, basically. And this isn't to be a Debbie Downer or a, doom and gloom person, but, there's a lot of conversations going on about what's happened over the past 4 years, using the fear, using the mandates, all these sort of coercive behaviours, and that they won't be able to do that again because too many people are awake. And I think there's a lot of truth to that, and it's awful, but my thought is that because they won't be able to use that tactic anymore, it will come down to, we've talked about wiping out people. Genocide is happening in a few countries currently around the world, and I wouldn't say it's a stretch of the imagination to say maybe those sort of tactics will be employed on a much larger scale because they can't use the fear and the coercion in the same manner that they did over the past 4 years, because people just aren't going to buy it. So it's going to have to be.
Obviously, that's possible. I mean, it's bleak, but it's possible. Yeah. But the other side of that coin, you may end up being right, of course. But the other side of that coin is they don't want to reveal themselves. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. So, despicable insectoid cockroaches like Harari don't want to be exposed. They don't want to be seen. Sunlight is the absolute best disinfectant. So they don't want to reveal their hand too much. They don't want, the curtain in the Wizard of Oz to completely fall down and you can see the guy there working the controls. They absolutely don't want that to happen, and it's in danger of happening, So yep. they will, even though they're not, they're somewhat irrational. I get that, but they will have to tread very carefully because they're in danger of the whole curtain just falling down and them being completely exposed.
It's certainly very interesting times. It's
an amazing time to be alive, Robin. It's an amazing time to be alive.
It is.
A bit tiring some days, yes, I understand, but still pretty interesting.
Yeah, and I hate to say it, but entertaining at
well, darkly so, yes.
Yes, I have a dark sense of humour. All the things you shouldn't laugh at, I laugh at. That's just me. But yeah, it certainly is an interesting point in history, that's for sure. Quite amazing. David, I'm so thrilled to actually have this conversation. It's been on the cards for a little while. I'm so thrilled that we could talk about creatures. What a weird sentence. I never thought I'd say that in my life. It's been great to talk about creatures. We will go out with the full clip of Bananas in Heaven, the TED Talk by preacher Yuval Harari.
By the Wiggles. This is the TED Talk by the Wiggles.
Is there something further to add to end our creature discussion or something?
No, I think we've covered things pretty well, Robin. Thank you. It's been my pleasure. I hope there's something useful for somebody somewhere in there. Look, as grim as it seems at times, and I totally acknowledge that there are times when it seems overwhelming. I get it. We're in this fight. They've had to back off a little bit. They've got all those resources, but we've got us, and we've got the truth. So, in some regards, not in all regards, but in some regards, I think the forces of darkness are on the back foot. So that should be, just a little gentle, warm congratulations to all the people who've spoken their mind, who've done the right thing, who've done whatever they can do. They should all take a little congratulation from that, I think.
Couldn't agree more. Right. Thanks, everybody, for watching and for all your comments. Thank you, David. Always a pleasure to talk to you.